Hello, welcome back to Far Horizons Gaming. My name is Ben, and today we're going to continue on with Suzerain. So last time out, we went to the inaugural ball and had to deal with a bunch of the fallout from that. So we're just going to pick it up right here where we left off, and we're going to hit up the newspapers. So it looks like we got 4 of them here. First up is from the Whole Sword Post. Let's see, protests across Swordland. Protests erupted around Swordland after the death of Bernard Circus, many of which started peaceful but soon turned violent. Protesters with red youth flags were seen in most central cities around Swordland carrying out violent riots and organizing protests that disrupted much vital services from being delivered to the Swordlish people. Protesters held sit-ins, which were broken up by riot police with tear gas and water cannons in the regions of Berja, Island, and Gruny. Thousands of people poured into Republic Avenue and Knockhaven and Soul Square and Wholesword in response to the Young Swords' attack. Similar protests around Swordland soon turned into violent riots. Fantastic. Alright, from Swordland today, protests in Gruny. Protests are taking place throughout the Gruny region in response to the assassination of Bernard Circus. The protesters raised their concerns about the Young Swords, the increased cost of living, and inequality prevalent in the country. Large rallies have been organized in the city centers of Benfey and Boren. A large congregation of Red Youth members have organized sit-ins and protests aimed at hampering public transport in the city of Volgan, which brought the city to a standstill for a few hours before riot police came to disperse large groups of protesters at transportation nodes. And the Lockhaven Times. Political chaos. Political violence has surrounded Swordland since yesterday. While officials from the police claim to have the situation under control, protests are turning into riots and violent attacks are occurring around the country. NFP and LUS call for protests. Sarah Keebner of the National Front Party called a rally to condemn communist influence from United Contana and called the violent protesters traitors to Swordland. These millennialists are roaming in our streets, conducting violent attacks in disguise as peaceful protesters. We can't let them exploit a man's murder, said Keebner in a press conference. On the other hand, the Labor Union of Swordland has gathered to condemn nationalist violence in Swordland. The protests gathered crowds of several thousand agitators on both sides of the Whole Sword, and acts of vandalism occurred. Katrina Horton accused Keebner for provoking the public. Young Swords vandalized shops. A group of people with Young Swords flags have vandalized a dozen shops in the trade district of Anarka, specifically targeting British and agnostic minorities. Shop owners who defended themselves were wounded in the attacks. The local police broke the groups apart. NFP office burned. A group of violent militants have assaulted the National Front Party headquarters in Morna and committed arson. Firefighters have been called to the scene where fires raged for hours on end. Several nearby houses burned to the ground before it was brought under control. Fantastic. And, we get to get insulted by the economists now. The wrong economy. The government has made its decision to promote a planned economy, a decision which is based on flawed arguments of Solonomics. The economists believe in the free market economy for a good reason. Now, before anyone calls us Sarkozy sympathizers, we don't support the excessive form of capitalism Sarkozy is spreading around the world like an Aspia. Our belief is that a balance can exist where the government can support the private sector with government money. Businesses could take the needed economic planning burden off the shoulder of the government. We disagree with the planned economy simply because we can't properly micromanage everything in society where people need to be able to determine their own future. The Swordlish people don't deserve to be shackled, and it is sad to know that President Rain doesn't think the same way. Cool beans, I don't really care. Alright, it's back to Wholesword here for a security briefing on the threats against Swordland. I arrived in front of the doors leading to the Situation Room. Today's security briefing was arranged in 2 parts, starting with the internal matters and moving on to external matters after a short break. Minister of Interior Lily Scroff and Minister of Justice and Law Nia Morno joins for the first part, the law enforcement briefing. For the second part, the Minister of Defense Joseph Valencia would join with a few high-ranking officials, including the Chief of the Armed Forces, Falcon Krieger. I opened the door. Lucy and Nia and Lilius rose from their seats. Sir. I nodded at Lucian and sat down. Everyone in the room sat down except for Lucian. He put on his glasses and went through the documents in front of him. Shortly after, he raised his head to address the attendees.
Mr. President, ladies, we will kick off today's meeting with the internal security briefing. I am assuming everyone here has already been over the agenda. We all have busy schedules, so without further ado, I'll jump into our first topic. As we feared, the political atmosphere has worsened.
The reports around the country indicate that tensions are rising as we feared.
What's the status on the Bernard Circus investigation?
I have received news this morning that the investigation into the murder of Bernard Circus is concluded.
Please enlighten us. The more we know, the better.
After further investigation and testimonies, we have confirmed the motive and also the events leading up to the shooting. A few days prior, members of the Red Youth initiated a violent attack on the Young Swords leader, local leader in Jen. We believe the Young Swords then called for revenge, leading to the death of Mr. Sekis. Since he often spoke against the Young Swords' national sentiments in the Assembly, he was a big target, not to mention his radical communist views. Radical? Sordon just lost a great writer. For what? It is unfortunate, but it was likely that an incident would happen. Lily handed over the report and pointed a highlighted section of the document. The investigation revealed the very troubling fact that the funding sources of the Red Youth have a clear link to United Cantana. What does that mean? The communist superpower is meddling in our affairs. Several Red Youth members with ties to United Cantana have been detained, and the information extracted from them points to preparation for a communist uprising in Swordland.
It isn't unusual for superpowers to influence other nations, but I think this case is a little far-fetched. The left lacks popular support in Swordland.
Nia eagerly lifted her hand and motioned for her to speak. I went over the report in detail. It would be wrong to jump to conclusions about a clear foreign interference yet. United Cantana has humanitarian and cultural ties with many countries, including Swordland. I also don't want to jump to conclusions. We shouldn't create a crisis with them. Nearly 3 decades ago, they funded General Ricard and tried to establish communist dictatorship in our country. If it was not for Colonel Soul, we would have seen the real crisis. She took a sip from her glass of water and continued. Our police chief, Carl Greiser, has linked the funding channel to the United Cantana consulate in Benfi. And as we all know, the enemy is Swordland to many, but we also have threats inside the country. Yeah, but as government, we have all the power to deal with any threat we face. If we give up essential freedoms to purchase temporary security, we deserve neither freedom nor security.
This is debatable, but yes, we know it's more security and surveillance causes the country under President Soul.
Let's not forget that President Soul, God bless him, brought stability after a long period of bloodshed and chaos. But moving on. Our highest internal threat comes from the estimated 20,000-strong British Freedom Front led by the imprisoned Doolin Ogg. They are a banned political organization, now militant forces trying to incite racial violence.
Let's see, are they supported by British citizens?
To some extent. Luckily, they couldn't attract a wide audience of Blues, but they could potentially attract thousands if anti-Bluish sentiment spreads in Swordland again. Lilius pointed to page 3 in the report. Our intelligence intercepted 2 crates filled with weapons close to the Rumberg border. They are filled with military-grade KA-74s. We expect that more have been smuggled in, since a group of Blues will cop these guns at a checkpoint not far away.
Rumberg has been acting aggressively in the region for a long time. I am not surprised they would attempt to weaponize the Bluish people against us. This is worrying. Very worrying.
We need to keep level-headed with Rumberg. They're looking for reasons to take action. They will play dirty while we play nice. It is a battle we will lose. This is grave news, but we must be careful not to stoke the fires of anti-Bluish sentiment. What is the second most important threat? It's the gang violence that's threatening Northeast Island regions. 2 prominent organized crime families are at war, and the potential for bloodshed is real.
Why can't we just arrest them?
The primary reason is deception and corruption. They infiltrated several government offices and the police. That's how they can evade us.
They're playing with fire. I want them gone. For good. Well, I agree it would make Swordland a better place. It will not be easy.
These gangs exist because corruption is so common in our country. They buy police officers and sit by checkpoints. Lilius Groff sighed deeply. I shall be honest with you. With our current capabilities, we may not be able to prevent the further arming of separatists while maintaining order in Birch and Northeast Island. If the law enforcement budget isn't increased, I can't be fully responsible for what happens. Our police units are spread thin as is. In light of this information, I might increase the law enforcement budget. I don't know. We'll see. We will rid our country from separatists and violent thugs if we do so. I wish you'd stop using the word thugs, at least. The real problem is corruption, which is fueling the gang violence, and is very likely the reason why those weapons were smuggled in. A higher budget could help us end that. I mean, these threats seem more direct than a few bribes. They are, and they need all the attention they can get from our administration. Lilius and Nia were openly scowling at each other. Lilius turned back to her notes. Well, this concludes the topics for the enchanter portion.
Thank you for the updates, Mrs. Groff, Mrs. Morgner.
Yes, thank you for the overview. Have a good day. Until next time. The two ministers left the room. We took a short break before continuing to the second part. Upon invitation, Joseph Lancia, along with 3 high-ranking officials from Ministry of Defense, walked into the room. One of the men was none other than General Kruger, the chief of the armed forces. Joseph made his way towards the table, while the others stood by the door.
Mr. President.
Joseph, welcome.
I have brought General Kruger due to the escalations on our borders.
General Kruger stepped forward and saluted. He had a strong jaw with sharp cheekbones. His tall stature, uniform, and medals, combined with his deep and intense stare, made him look threatening. He was in his 70s, yet he had a bulky body that was the result of his commando training. Not only was he the second most decorated officer in Sworland, he was also the longest serving. I saluted him. He smiled at the gesture and bowed his head in respect. Joseph tapped his foot impatiently. He seemed uneasy with the presence of another high-ranking officer in the room.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming to this significant gathering. Let's begin.
Joseph and Vulcan took the seats at the table, while the rest of the officers stood by the door.
Mr. President, the situation at the western and northern borders towards Rumberg is very tense. We are observing deployments of divisions closer to our border. Rumberg has been acting increasingly expansionist in the past decades and also interfered in Norway, but now they have turned their sights on us.
This concerns me very much.
We are observing these areas actively. Our contingency plans are ready. It seems like they want to increase the pressure both externally and internally.
Mr. President, if I may. Please, General. The picture is becoming clearer. The latest information from the interior about the weapons caches, and now there's active military buildup close to our borders. The entire situation was analyzed by our General Staff and our predictions of future territorial incursion by Rumberg. Yeah, I think that threat's a bit exaggerated. With all due respect, I think you're underestimating what we could face. I require an increase in the military budget to enlist more soldiers. Only then we can stand strong against our enemies. The enlarged armed forces will hold them at bay.
Falcon is right. We do need an increase in the military budget. Although we don't see eye to eye exactly on how to spend the budget, that much we agree on. I have my concerns about Rumberg too. We need strong allies to withstand such a superior power. They are our nemesis. That's not a statement. Times are changing and war is coming, Mr. President. Whether we like it or not, we must be prepared. During the election, you said nothing about focusing on military. I ask you to reconsider and to increase the military budget. The future and safety of Suzerain is in your hands.
As you said before, times change, Joseph. We'll see. A smile brought a glimmer of hope on Joseph's face. Our forces would crumble under decrease, and Rumberg would be much more compelled to exploit weaknesses. Our country hasn't fought any invading force for 200 years. You cannot let it happen, Mr. President.
We should find regional allies like Volks and Gillespie to deter Rumberg. There are several options on the table.
I mean, all these options should be considered.
They could be considered, but why ponder to others? We could solve these issues ourselves.
We have no true friends outside these borders. Everyone fell silent when a soldier entered the room and let Joseph Lancia know that a call had come through from the ministry.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Joseph left the room to answer. A few minutes later, he entered the room again. His expression had changed.
Mr. President, there's been a Bergen military activity close to the Naba border. I just spoke to the local commander. Vulcan, we should go to the ministry and get further updates from our branches.
Understood. Raising military readiness is the first call of action. If there is truly an extraordinary attempt, we would relay it to you immediately, waiting for further orders, Mr. President. Remain calm. Make sure not to escalate things further. Nobody wants a war.
We'll exercise utmost caution, Mr. President.
Hail, Sultan. Her. They saluted and left the room. Rumberg was already testing us, and the reports from the interior indicate interference inside our borders. Communists, nationalists, British rebels, Rumberg expansionism. What was next? Sworland had always been a key piece in the chessboard of the global rivalry between Arkazi and United Cantana. But in the recent years, there's no such aggression from Rumberg, not at these levels at least. All it takes is one tiny spark to start the flames of war. The phone rang. Rumberg had decided to close their consulate in Lockhaven. Fantastic. Okay. So let's check out the country overview here first. So, order. We have Nationwide Revolt, which is obviously a red thing. No kidding. diplomacy, we have diplomatic pressure as an orange thingy. It says Swordland is under noticeable pressure for Rumberg through reduction of diplomatic staff and the closure of a key consulate. Cool beans. Alright. Let's see. So, it looks like Vezord is our only report. Let's go and check that out first. So, United Cantana Embassy helped protesters. Around midnight, red youth protesters clashed with young swords at the Vezord City Center, resulting in many injuries. Counter-protesters were cornered in front of the United Cantana Embassy after they were pushed back by the police. The embassy opened its doors. Red youth members escaped inside. The police are still waiting outside the building for the return of red youth members. Cool. Alright, let's see if there's any reports in Whole Sword or not. Alright, there's one report and then two other things. We'll do the report first. Arkazi develops first ICBM. Intelligence reports that Arkazi has successfully completed the Missile 4, intercontinental ballistic missile, which has the estimated capability to accurately destroy targets at thousands of kilometers range. Arkazi missile capabilities have significantly increased, posing a threat to territories that are further away from western Marcopa. Fantastic. Alright, let's go and check out the news here. We got 6 of them. So, from Swordland's Day, rumors of an infrastructure project. Anonymous sources have reported to Swordland today that several government officials have invited construction companies to meetings regarding a new major infrastructure project. If true, this is great news. Infrastructure in Swordland is lacking heavily needed investment. We hope that very qualified and experienced companies like Underhall Construction win the bid. Cool. Alright, Lockhaven Times. Gang violence claims young girl's life. 15-year-old girl was shot to death in Narbel as she walked her dog a few blocks away from her apartment. The police said the shooting, which occurred in an area affiliated with the gang Coronelli, was a reckless act of violence, and the victim was not the target. The 15-year-old was shot about 4:45 p.m., right before she was returning home. A man who witnessed the event told police the shooters yelled gang slogans at him on the street before he heard someone fire at least 10 shots, sources said. He later saw that the victim had been hit and called the authorities. Our sources report that the local police force of the region is understaffed and overworked, which adds to the current bleak situation. Alright, we got 2 of them here from the Radical. 1927, Never Again. I was there when General Luderin and Ricard clashed in the plains outside of Holsword when the armies of the Swordage people killed each other. I was there when Colonel Sol won the war after bombarding cities with Swordage civilians inside them. We saw this great nation fall into bloodshed and chaos. We thought that we learned our lesson and formed a new republic. One man's idea became the idea of the state, and we allowed it to be forced upon us. We were a generation who lived with Tarkin soul for most of our lives. However, this generation is different. Our kids have not experienced civil war or martial law. This generation is born in a changing time and cannot allow the same conditions to return. We cannot forget when General Luderin declared martial law in 1927, when his tanks rolled and murders took place. Those tanks cannot roll again. Bombs cannot fall again. Freedoms cannot be suspended again. 1927, never again. And the real truth behind the economic crisis. We have all seen this scenario played before. Large corporate businesses, time and time again, receive money from the government under the disguise of helping the economy. But what about the people? Many in the neglected regions still do not have electricity or fresh water in their homes, and they're the lucky ones. There is a growing housing crisis, and people are on the streets begging for food. In the year 1954, it is high time that money is invested in us, the people of Swordland, instead of the armchair millionaires in their luxurious villas. Alright, from The Economist, Underhall Construction once again number 1. Underhall Construction is once again picked as the number 1 construction company of the year by the reputable Statistics Swordland. This was the 11th time the company was selected for the top spot in a row since Chris Shaw was appointed as the CEO. Veteran industry leader Shaw congratulated the employees first and foremost in a private company meeting held in a luxurious resort in Earlery. He also mentioned the recent addition of Heart of Swordland Organization CEO Marcel Caranti to the board of advisors helped immensely in this great achievement. At The Economists, we think now is a great time to invest in Underhall Construction as the current year's projection already shows a 13% increase in growth compared to last year. Cool. And from Geopolitica, Rumberg closes consulate. Rumberg has closed down its consulate in Swordland, one of the few East Marcopa nations to have diplomatic ties with the Northern Kingdom. This comes right after the deployment of Rumbergian troops near the northern borders of Swordland. Rumbergian officials cite political unrest and uncertainty as the main reason for the closure, while raising concerns over security in the country. In Lockhaven, diplomatic sources said the Rumbergian flag has been lowered overnight, and the diplomatic staff are expected to leave Swordland on Friday or Saturday. Many Lockhaveners were shocked as the 120-year-old Rumberg consulate closed. Dozens of citizens with Rumbergian relatives went out to protest against this action in the afternoon. It was not clear if the consulate closure was temporary or permanent, signaling a break in diplomatic ties which date from 1923. Our editors see the situation as a further deterioration of relations between Sordland and Nuremberg. This can easily be regarded as a one-sided provocation from the north. Awesome. Alright, let's head back to Sordland here, and let's react to the unrest. The political situation in the country has escalated. Chief Strategist Lucian Glad has prepared several action plans we can execute. What will we do to address the intensifying political climate? Alright, I'm fairly sure we probably want to visit the towns again. And yeah, there it is in the guide. Visit the affected towns in person. So we'll do that again. Alright, got another newspaper. Whole Sword Post. President Rain talks to protesters. President Anton Rain visited towns around Greater Whole Sword and Gruny regions, which were heavily affected by the protests and riots that popped up around the country, triggered by the death of Circus. He was seen talking to the protesters, listening to the concerns of the citizens. This sends a powerful message to Sword citizens that the government is walking among them and listening to their problems. Whole Sword is desperately trying to restart Swordland's economy after the session, as political unrest is not helping, said a Sword scholar and professor of law at Whole Sword State University in Whole Sword. Cool. The journal is probably just saying that we visited the towns. Sweetness. Alright. Let's head home. It was late in the evening. The Maroon Palace was finally getting somewhat quiet when I returned to my office at the top. I eagerly approached my chair and sprawled out on it. It had been an exhausting day, just like every day since I took office. Let's just prepare to go home. I forced myself out of the chair to gather my jacket and briefcase. I really needed to make some time for my family. I quickly glanced out the window before leaving. Serge and the guards are outside by the main gate as usual. I heard a couple of knocks on the door. My secretary, Livy Suno, entered. Mr. President, Mr. Tusk is here to see you. We had a meeting with the Lothric spokesman. I'm so sorry for not giving you proper notice. I was just about to leave. Can we, maybe postpone the meeting? But he's already here, Mr. President. What do you want me to tell him? After a moment, Mr. Tusk swaggered into the room. I met Sordland's most prominent businessman once or twice, but never alone. He had large jowls, blindingly shiny shoes, and the air of someone who was used to getting his way. Anything to drink, Mr. Tusk? Water? Whiskey?
Cognac, preferably from before you're born, sweetheart.
I'll check the supply room. Olivia back to the office, shooting me an apologetic look as she did so. Walter hung up his hat, which I could see was lined with mink. He fixed me with a long, hard stare that broke into a toothy grin.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm here to congratulate you.
We both sat down.
My business partners and I wish you a successful term as the leader of our nation.
Yeah, get to the point, Tusk. Why are you really here?
I see that you're not very welcoming, President. I merely congratulated you. I see no reason to necessitate rudeness.
I don't believe in being rude. Time is money, after all, isn't that right? Walter took a conspicuous look at the diamond-encrusted watch on his wrist.
Yes, that's true, but at the same time, patience, humility are important virtues for a man in your position. You are the President, after all. May I continue?
Please.
I'd like to build a profitable relationship between us. That being said, there are some concerns of mine and the people I represent, which I'd like to take this opportunity to clear up.
I'm listening.
The ruined state of the economy in Sword has influenced everyone. Their recession hit all of us hard.
Walter pulled out a box of cigars from his jacket.
I think this parfum must be the best cigars in the whole continent. Would you like to try one?
Why not? Let's smoke with him. I grabbed one out of the pack. Walter lit it up with his large curved lighter.
Now we're talking. A man has pleasure and business.
Walter grabbed himself a cigar and lit it up as well. We looked out at the city scenery as we both puffed away.
I heard that you purchased stock from Arbitine Industries in Arcasia. Smart buy. They're developing new gadgets that are going to be profitable.
I mean, spend money to make money, they say. Let's see if it holds true.
You'll be surprised at what one can achieve given the resources in capitalism. I'll buy a couple thousand shares too to expand my portfolio. I hope the investment pays off for both of us, President.
His eyes wandered away for a moment.
The assassination and troubles between the left and right are worrying, but the recession is the root cause of these issues. For us, it's worrying that you have decided to promote a planned economy.
Yeah, we need more government control to fix the economy.
Do you really, though? Our government is already overburdened with managing several key industries with the loss of efficiency.
He leaned forward in the chair.
The highway investment was a good call, but there was more to gain in the high-speed rail, especially for business logistics.
Yeah, our goal is to focus on the needs of the people, not businesses.
I do understand where you're coming from. Businesses will help those people get employed. We can be close allies. The group can help you get sorted out of their session, which will be the key problem to solve in your term. It could even determine your re-election. Now, let's start with a gesture of goodwill. Soon the investment project contract will be awarded to one of the top 3 main contenders.
He pulled the check out of his pocket and slid it towards me on the table. My personal bank details were listed on it with a deposit of 500,000 Rand ready to be transferred. This was 6 months of President's salary.
If the contract is somehow awarded to Underhaul Construction, that would not only work hard and deliver, but also do it on time. What do you think, Mr. Rain? Wouldn't that be good?
He put his index finger on the check. There was a noise by the door. Livy Suno was standing there, holding a tray with a bottle and 2 glasses. I'm so sorry, Mr. Tusk, but all I could find was 1942 Savini. I hope that's acceptable. She quickly put the tray on my desk and walked out. Tusk eyed her as she left.
Remind me to visit your office more often. Now, where were we? Do we have a deal?
Let me double check on this. I think we probably want to just take the bribe and then throw him in jail later. But alright, so yeah, I was right. We definitely need to take the bribe and then just screw him over later. So, not yet. We both know you can do better than that.
You're right about that. I'll make this my final offer.
He pulled out another check with a smile. This time 1,000,000 Rand was listed on the piece of paper. I like how he brought 2 checks just in case I decided not to take his initial offer. Yeah, that's better. I accept. He grinned and let out a laugh. The check was right between his hands. He pulled his hands back and I took the check.
This deal also showed to the group that the administration has left the private sector behind.
I'm very happy we came to an agreement today, Mr. Tusk.
Likewise, President Rain, it's a pleasure to do business with you. We'll be keeping in touch.
Walter stood up, grabbed his jacket, and shook my hand before making his way towards the door. He smiled before closing the door and leaving. I gathered my things and prepared to finally head home. As I walked out, I noticed Livia still there, covering up her typewriter for the evening. If I may be so bold, Mr. President, did you accept his offer?
Of course I didn't. How could you even ask me that?
I mean, the other girls told me about kinds of dealings that went on during the Alfonso administration. I wasn't sure if you're that kind of president. I most certainly am not. I will take his money, but I will not actually use it as a bribe. It's just stolen money. I don't care. She and I took a moment to look out over the city lights of the city before heading to the elevators. Fantastic. Wow, okay. A ton of things just popped here. But I think that's a good place to go and call it for today as any. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you all next time.